This is Digging Deeper with At the Coalface. This episode is brought to you by IMARC, the International Mining and Resources Conference, and your host, Jessica Rouse.
Now, on this episode of Digging Deeper with At the Coalface, we have the pleasure of sitting down with Minister for Natural Resources and Mines, Manufacturing and Regional and Rural Development, and about to be Acting Health Minister for a short time, Dale Last. How are we?
Yeah, good morning. Great to be with you. It's on a beautiful winter's day in Brisbane.
Oh, it's very gloomy and rainy here, so hopefully your day's better than mine. Congratulations first. You received your National Police Medal not long ago.
Yes, look, that was came out of left field and in recognition of my former service, and that was nice to go along and receive that and catch up with some of my old work colleagues who were equally surprised, and so yeah, it was nice. It was nice to be recognised.
I feel like you would have learnt a lot in your time in the police force, a lot of things that you would have, life lessons, things you would have been able to bring into the role that you're in now, would you say?
Oh, no doubt about that. We're only talking about that the other day, and I was talking to the governor about that actually, and about the number of ex-police officers that are in Parliament, and certainly that ability to talk and communicate with anyone, regardless of the circumstances, is certainly an asset in this role. As you'd appreciate, we get to talk with a myriad of people, and sometimes they're cranky and they're upset, and certainly those skills and that ability that we develop over many, many years as a police officer stands you in good stead.
I feel like it gives you some insight being in government too. I mean, often we have politicians who perhaps haven't worked in a job where they're out in the public and they're doing a role that really would give you an insight into what everyday life and what people are dealing with.
Oh, look, absolutely. And as you would appreciate, when you're a police officer, you see the good and the bad.
Mm.
And, and you're in that role where you are assisting the community, where you're protecting the community, and you're seeing people in a lot of situations at their lowest ebb, and that stays with you, and you bring that with you into these types of roles. And certainly, I think the fact that I've served in some really remote areas in Western Queensland and far North Queensland has stood me in good stead. It just gives me an appreciation, and I guess that's what underlies my passion for the bush. In terms of making sure that the bush is not forgotten.
Yeah, exactly. Certainly passion that you bring to your portfolios that you have at the moment. Let's talk about coal, minerals. Let's start with Coal Australia. They released their first annual coal report not long ago, which showed that the sector delivered for Queensland $38.4 billion in direct spending, more than 400,000 jobs. Those are massive figures.
Such an important industry for Queensland, and really underpins our economy. And you only have to go out into the coal fields, and I'm fortunate that most of those coal mines in Queensland actually are in my electorate, my home electorate of Burdekin electorate. And there's nothing gives me more satisfaction to go out there and to visit the troops on the ground and talk to the workers, and now in this role to meet with those resource companies and talk about their plans. And we're seeing some movement in the coal space, some new players coming into Queensland now. That's exciting, and they're bringing with that a newfound passion and commitment to really take it forward. And off the back of a trade mission to Korea and Japan earlier this year, increased demand for Queensland coal. We know it's the best in the world, and they want to get their hands on more of it. So that's a good news story for Queensland.
Our Hunter Valley coal gives you a run for your money.
Bring it on.
And speaking of that international demand, Future Coal, they had a report earlier this year showing that high demand that is only going to increase. That's good news for us as well.
Oh, look, absolutely. When you look up 4.1%, our total export volume's up in the last 12 months. So 205 million tonnes over the 12-month period. That's a lot of coal, but we have that capacity to increase that. And certainly we're working with a number of resource companies, and it heartens me. And I was talking to the CEO of Dilmar, new player in the coal space in Queensland. They purchased the Anglo assets, and very, very keen to reopen Moranbah North and Grosvenor underground mines. There's over 1,000 workers between those two mines, and what a good news story that would be if we can get those both up fully operational again and working.
There certainly seems to have been the last 12 months, particularly in Queensland more so than New South Wales, those new players coming in, mines reopening, things getting approved, which is great. There seems to have been quite an uptick in the last 12, 18 months.
Oh, look, absolutely. When I came into this role, I really wanted to rebuild that confidence. You know, that the resource sector had taken a bit of a battering, a bit of a bruising under the former government. So we really worked hard at rebuilding that confidence. That's reflected, of course, in the Fraser Institute. 39 to 13 in terms of that confidence in the sector. We want to get down to single-digit figures with the next one, but it's about showing that support for the industry. We've got our resources cabinet committee now up and running, and that's working so well in terms of streamlining the approval process and removing that red tape, and really addressing those issues which were causing the concern out there in the resource sector, the land objection process, the financial provisioning scheme, and taking them on that journey with us, which is really important.
Mm. It would be remiss of me not to touch on coal royalties. BMA certainly being quite vocal, as have a few others, about how constraining it is and how difficult the royalties are making things. Your thoughts?
Oh, look, Premier was very clear, and we went to the last election with a commitment that there would be no change. We didn't want that uncertainty to continue into this current term of government. So the Premier was very clear at the last election that there would be no change to the royalty regime in Queensland for the duration of this term. We continue to work with our resource companies, our coal companies. As I've said, we're looking at ways that I can make their life easier. And when we're talking about the objection process and the financial provisioning scheme, streamlining those approvals, that all helps in the overall structure, if you like, and the way that these mines operate.
Yeah. You said I was at the Coal Australia
Mm.
industry event up in Brisbane a couple of weeks ago, and you said on the panel, and I quote, that the royalties provide stability. I don't know that got quite the reaction that you hoped in that room.
Oh, and look, it comes back to my previous comment that the resources sector was completely blindsided by the previous Labor government's royalty announcement. That it just came out of thin air. It blindsided even us in opposition, and we wanted to reassure them that they weren't going to be subjected to something like that going forward. That we had a very clear message at the last election, and we've said that's going to be continue for the duration of this term. So make your decisions based on that commitment.
I'm sure the companies would like to see it lessened, though.
Oh, I have no doubt about that. We'll continue, to talk. We meet regularly with our resource companies. We've got a good relationship with them and the industry bodies, and we'll continue to work with them.
Do you see the government being forced in any way to bring down the royalties? I know the Courier Mail, I think, is calling for a productivity commission looking into the royalties and the impacts and that sort of thing. Do you see the pressure perhaps building to a point where the government has to change it?
Oh, look, we continue to meet and consult with our resource companies. I'll continue to work with them. My job is to make their life as easy as it possibly can, and to remove any obstacles. Those approvals. When I have a look at the number of coal mining leases that I'm approving, the exploration that I'm approving on a constant basis. There's certainly interest out there still in the coal mining sector. When you have a look at Yancoal's purchase of Kestrel and the expansion at Centurion and Carmichael mines. There's still a lot of work. Argo's acquisition of those coal mining assets in central Queensland. It's not all doom and gloom. There is still a future for the coal sector in Queensland, and we've been saying that from day one, and we'll continue to say that.
Yeah, definitely. One Nation's certainly getting a lot of attention across the country at the moment. Very, very vocal about using our own coal here, about coal-fired power stations as well. What are your thoughts on coal-fired power stations in general? Perhaps building
Oh,
new
look,
ones?
we've committed. We've committed to keeping our coal-fired power stations going right up until the 2040s. They are an integral part of our energy mix. 60% of energy generated in Queensland is from coal-fired power stations. They are a crucial part of our energy mix, and they will continue to operate. We'll continue to maintain them, and we've committed to doing that. It's also heartening for me to see now the gas-fired power options now coming on board as well. That we're now looking at constructing gas-fired power stations around the state. Gas is a really good news story in Queensland, as you'd appreciate, and nice to see that option now coming to fruition as well.
Yeah, and let's talk about some of those other critical minerals, other energy options, the Taroom and Denison troughs for a start.
Oh, look, absolutely. And I bought some show and tell for you.
I
So
love show and tell.
it started off with a little bottle of light crude from Amiga out there in the Taroom Trough. This is the bottle that I was holding when I was jumping around out there and all excited a few months ago. And then, of
Yeah.
course, Denison upped the ante, of course, with a bigger bottle from the Denison Trough. So have a look at that. It's just beautiful. The quality of the oil that we're
Yeah.
finding in both of those areas is magnificent, and that drilling is continuing um, to show really positive results. And wouldn't it be nice, as I say, to be able to produce our own oil and refine our own fuel right
Mm.
here in Queensland? And that's certainly where we're heading.
And it sounds like there's quite a significant amount up there. Was it the Taroom trough? There's something like enough there to power Queensland for 5 years.
Oh, every well to date that they've drilled in that Taroom Trough has found oil. And so they're now scaling it up, just trying to get a handle on the actual what are the reserves in that Taroom Trough. We had another resource company come in yesterday who's on the edge of the Taroom Trough, and they've found oil. So it is massive.
Yeah.
And so now we just need to scale it up and start looking at that infrastructure. We've got a Taroom Trough development plan. The Coordinator General's got a team that's working across all the relevant agencies. It's an exciting time, particularly in that neck of the woods.
I must admit, I'm not super duper familiar with what has been going on up there. Are they companies that are they Australian? Are they companies that are new to us?
No, companies well known in Australia. You've got Shell, Amiga, Elixir, Drill Search. They're companies that are well known in Australia,
Yeah.
and certainly when you look at the Denison Trough, they're a well known company out there. And I went out and visited them at the back of Injune. It's a pretty remote location, but they're very very excited, and they're producing oil right now and piping that through to Gladstone. So. It is there in Queensland, but of course the conflict in the Middle East has really shone a light on
Mm.
how valuable this oil is and what it can do to fuel prices. And there's not too many people out there, I'm sure, would have enjoyed paying $3 a litre for fuel during the height of that crisis.
No, not at all. As you say, it certainly highlights how important it would be for us to be able to have and produce and use our own gas, our own oil. I mean, that's
Yeah.
massive.
Well, Queensland's doing all the heavy lifting when it comes to gas production in Australia. We're providing now nearly 90% of the gas for Australia coming out of this state. That's a good news story, and
Mm.
we have some massive gas developments in the pipeline, which are about to come online as well. So we're going to even expand even further our gas production in this state. As I've said to the Prime Minister and the Federal Resource Minister, if you want some of that beautiful Queensland gas, just build a bigger pipeline, and we're more than happy to shoot it down that pipeline to those southern states. They talk about this East Coast gas crisis. Well, I'm calling it the southern state gas crisis because we certainly don't have that in Queensland.
Exactly. And I'm just thinking back to I've been in media for a little bit in New South Wales. Was it the Narrabri to Newcastle gas pipeline? I think at one point was linking up to Queensland. Has that?
There is a pipeline. There is a
Yeah.
pipeline there in existence at the moment, but
Yeah.
it's constrained because of its capacity. That's the
Yeah.
problem at the moment. It's running at capacity. We need a bigger pipeline, and we need to duplicate that pipeline, and they can have all the gas that they want. It's as simple as that. It defies belief that states like Victoria would be looking at importing gas when we
Yes.
have so much gas here in Queensland.
That's exactly right. And all of this, of course, means jobs.
Jobs, jobs, jobs. And I go out to those communities, to the Roma, Chinchillas, Miles, to some of those communities, and I see the difference that it's made by having these resource companies out there
Mm.
working. They're using local suppliers, they're providing local employment opportunities. It's been a game changer for those communities. It has absolutely transformed those communities where those gas companies are in operation, and I see the relationships growing, and how productive they are now and how involved they are in those communities, and some of the infrastructure that they're helping to provide, some of the services that they're now providing. And I'm always make that point, particularly for any new resource company coming into Queensland. I often say to them, get some skin in the game if you're going to come and work and produce in this state, because that's important. That social license is so important. And to their credit, they've taken that message on board, and they've become very, very involved in their local communities, and that's reflected in the comments that I hear from local governments out in those areas as well.
That social license is so important. I mean, we're seeing issues in New South Wales with the transmission lines and that sort of thing going through farmers' properties, and the arguments and the companies going onto farmers' land allegedly without talking to them, and all of this stuff. That
Oh,
relationship is so important to
Well,
sort
and
of.
I see it. I go out there onto some of these cattle properties, and I see all the new fencing and the bitumen roads through the middle of their properties, and the tanks and the water, bores being put in place and sheds being constructed, and they certainly appreciate that. It's been a game changer for them, and there's blocks out there who are utilising the water produced as a result of this gas production to now irrigate crops, and
Yeah.
whereas before they didn't have that option. So you're driving along, and all of a sudden there's hundreds of hectares of forage sorghum being irrigated, and hasn't that made a difference?
Yeah, exactly.
This episode of Digging Deeper Without the Coalface is proudly sponsored by IMARC, the International Mining and Resources Conference and Exhibition, from October 27 to 29 at ICC Sydney. Eligible mine site personnel can attend IMARC with a free all-access mining guest pass. Discover the latest technologies, learn from the industry peers, and take practical ideas and insights back to the site. And getting there is easy with free return bus transport from the Hunter, Western and Southern coalfields. Don't miss your chance to be part of Australia's largest mining event. Grab your free mining guest pass now at imarcglobal.com. That's imarcglobal.com.
Of course, there's plenty of other critical minerals as well. Probably a month or so ago, delivering Queensland's critical minerals future 2026 to 30, something the government put out. What was the main?
Here's a copy I prepared earlier.
I love it. Tell us, what's the main focus of that particular report?
Oh, look, it's an updated critical mineral strategy, about delivering projects, expanding that value chain, securing that global investment. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute, but also, building that stronger regional Queensland. And critical minerals is a very, very hot topic at the moment. It is, and I'm seeing that reflected in the international interest. These overseas investors are now coming into Queensland, and really, really keen to get their hands on some of those 51 critical minerals and rare earths that we have here in Queensland, particularly the US. That US-Australia Critical Minerals Alliance is in place. We're a resource state. We've put our hand up and said to the Prime Minister, well, we expect our fair share of that fund because we are a resource state. But growing interest from the US in our critical minerals is auguring well going forward in terms of our development of these mines. I really want to now build into that value add, that processing component, because that's where the jobs and the money is. We don't just want to be digging this ore out, putting it on a ship and sending it overseas for processing. We want to build that processing component into Queensland, and we're now getting that interest as we go forward. I did a trade mission to the US last year. Off the back of that, we signed 3 deals. So Graphinex in Townsville, so they're producing graphite from their mine at Esmeralda. EQ Resources at Mount Carbine, that's tungsten, highly sought after, of course. And then RZ Resources down here in Brisbane, who are processing silica sand. So there's 3 deals that have already been signed. Premier's heading over there in a week's time to talk critical minerals. You can talk about a whole lot of subjects, a whole lot of topics. Going to the US in a week's time to talk about critical minerals, taking our updated strategy with him. And, that relationship is growing. The US Consul General just spent a week. We put him in a car at Mount Isa, and he drove over the course of a week through to Townsville. So it's a long way.
That would have been a good insight for him.
All those copper mines, all those vanadium mines.
Yeah.
He's visited the whole lot of them, and to really get a handle on what we've been talking about when we talk about that Northwest Minerals Province and the opportunities that exist there. And I've got to tell you, he was impressed. He was seriously impressed. And so he now takes that message. He now takes that message back to the US about just what we do have here in Queensland. And I think over the next 12 to 18 months, you're going to see some real movement in that space.
Yeah. Lots of US investment. Are we seeing from other countries as well?
Yeah, look, Indonesia are coming here in increasing numbers. Of course, we still have those traditional relationships with
Mm.
Korea, with Japan, a lot of very well-known Japanese companies, the Indomitsu, Sumitomo's, Mitsubishi's of the world that are doing business in Queensland. Great to do business with. Looking for, of course, long-term deals and, of course, that stability that I talked about before in terms of is there a stable government in place? Do they know and can they invest in confidence that it's not going to change or there'll be a hiccup in the short term? So certainly they're there, but we're now seeing this interest from Europe, not an area that you would traditionally think
Yeah.
about, but countries like Poland and Finland who have massive manufacturing capabilities, looking to this state for those opportunities going forward because they're now running out of these critical minerals as well. So all of a sudden, Europe's become a player. And I hosted a European delegation here a few weeks ago, 18 European countries, lots of follow-up and lots of interest coming out of Europe at the moment as well.
Are we going to be able to keep up?
It's full on. It is full on. It's a beaten track through my door here, and but we're making the most of this opportunity. We're selling a positive message. They're feeling confident when they come and talk with us that we're supportive, that we're backing our resource sector, that we're here to help, that we're removing those obstacles to make their life easy.
Mm.
If you have a look. The last greenfield coal mine in Queensland took 12 years from when they started to when they started digging out coal. We want to halve that. That's an
Yeah.
ambitious target. We want to halve that. We think we can. And because time is money, we appreciate that. Investors don't want to hang around for 12 years
No.
waiting for a mine to come into production. So we're working very, very hard in that space, particularly through that Resources Cabinet Committee to make that happen.
Feel like we are such a successful country, obviously attracting all of that international interest, but it's not just for the mineral itself, the passion and the interest that you see on sites when you go to, I'm sure you can appreciate, you would go to many sites. I went to a relatively new polymetallic mine here in New South Wales a couple of weeks ago. Very unique. I believe there's a polymetallic mine in Queensland as well. Everyone underground love what they do. They're so passionate about it. They want to get that mineral out of the ground and get it floated and cleaned as quick as they can and get as most money out of it as they can. And it's just so cool to see how passionate people are. It's not just about the money. They just bloody love it.
Oh, look, they do. It gets in their veins, and you're
Yeah.
right. When I travel around, and right from drillers and explorers through to these resource companies, and when you talk to the workers, and they take so much pride in what they're
Mm.
doing, and I see that firsthand, and that's why it was so important for us to save the copper smelter at Mount Isa and Phosphate Hill, and to keep that copper refinery going in Townsville, because that would have just sent the wrong message to the world if we'd have let those
Yeah.
those facilities closed. So that was important investment, a collaboration between the Queensland government and the federal government, and a lot of work involved in securing those facilities. But they have a future now going forward. We're now seeing some of these massive copper projects being delivered in that northwest area, the Eva Copper Project, for example, which will secure that concentrate that smelter needs to operate going forward.
Yeah. In all of your traveling around overseas when you're going on these trade missions, how does Australia look when it comes to what we're doing, technology, jobs, et cetera, et cetera? How do we compare? Is it even comparable?
Well, we need to be out there promoting ourselves, and it really hit home for me when I went to the Prospectors and Developers Conference in Toronto, PDAC as it's known. It's held every year in Toronto. It's why they hold it there in February, I do not know, because it was like minus 23 when we
Oh
landed,
my
but
goodness.
it is just off the planet in terms of weather. But there's 30,000 odd delegates go to that particular conference from around the world, and when you walk around that conference, you suddenly realise and understand, wow, we're right across the other side of the world here in Australia. We're such a small player in the overall scheme of things. So
Mm.
we needed to be out there We needed to be out there flying the flag for Queensland, which is exactly what we did. And then off the back of that conference, back through the US, where we signed those 3 trade deals, and it's just flowed on from there. So we got the international conference, IMARC in Sydney in October. Already huge interest in Queensland. Lots of calls coming in now. Where can we find the Queensland stall at IMARC? We want to talk to the Queensland delegation because they're seeing that opportunity. It's now, that message has now started to get out internationally that if you're chasing particularly critical minerals, come to Queensland because there's a state that is open for business.
Yeah, exactly. Where do you see Queensland in 10 years?
Oh, look, I see us being, right up that ladder, towards the top of that ladder. We know that at the moment China controls most of those critical minerals in the world. I'd like to think that Queensland could be in a position where we're challenging that going forward. We've certainly got the minerals here in the state. We've got the quantities in this state. It's now making sure that, we've got those big ticket infrastructure items like energy, water, roads that enable these projects now to get off the ground and move forward.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Dale, it's been a pleasure chatting to you this morning. I will see you at IMARC, speaking of.
Absolutely. Well, there you go. There you go. Get in early if you want to have a chat because the Queensland stall is being hotly lobbied at the moment.
It's such a cool conference. I think that last year when I went was the first time I'd been exposed to that international side of mining. And it was so cool to see what other countries were doing and what other countries were talking about. Like, we've got our own hot topics here, but what everyone else was chatting about. It was so cool.
Well, resources is global. It truly is. And when you go to these sorts of conferences, you begin to understand that. And then you sense that passion from all the delegates from all around the world and to have them all come together, you just feed off that. And there's certainly those opportunities for states like Queensland to get down there and promote what we have and encourage that investment in Queensland, which is exactly what we're doing.
Yeah, exactly. Beautiful. Dale, thank you for the chat. Thank you for the show and tell.
Yeah, go to the oil in Queensland.
I should have gone to my office and got my lump of coal.
Well, I got one of them too here somewhere. Hang on.
Of course you do.
There we go. There we go.
There we go. Well, thank you for joining us for this episode of Digging Deeper with At the Coalface. You can download more episodes of the podcast on all your favourite podcast platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, also on YouTube, Amazon Music, all the usual places. Make sure you leave us a rating and a review. We'd love to hear what you thought. And if you do have a story idea or something you'd like us to talk about on the podcast, please send me an email, jess@thecoalface.net.au. I'd love to hear from you. And we'll be back next time for another episode of Digging Deeper with At the Coalface.